I understood the like aggressive power of womanhood, and I was just like fascinated.
Like men, sometimes the whole thing is like, they know you don't want to have sex with them, but if they can trick you into it, then they won't.
I just want to be in Star Trek so I can be in all the universes.
You're really close. The first message after I watched Squid Game to director Hwang was, I am so sorry and thank you so much for casting me. I'm gonna cry.
Hi, and welcome to the Hollywood Reporter Roundtable series. I'm your host, Lacey Rose. Question for all of you. If we'd been a fly on the wall as each of you were preparing for your shows, what would we see you be doing right before a director called action?
Oh, right before a director
Right before. Yeah, like how do you lock into your characters? Lily, I feel like I heard something about maybe you had Pamela's voice in
Oh yeah, I did. Well, I constantly I would actually forget to take my earbuds out and ruin my own performance with my white earbuds sticking out my ear because I'd have her voice constantly in my ear. Just pacing and listening and trying to stay in the zone of the feeling, which I've never, at this time more than ever, I've like sort of stayed in it the whole time. Which is kind of exhausting.
I bet. What about the rest of you?
Well, my character has a very specific sort of like artifice always. So I would sort of just take a minute and connect to what she's actually feeling and then the artificial face or demeanor she would put on to make sure nobody would see that.
And like, how do you do that?
What do you mean?
Very good. You just saw it right there.
No, I don't know. Just like putting on. I mean, because my character always has this very like this like specific kind of fake smile. So I would do that, but always remembering what she's actually feeling.
I think it's an interesting question because it's in some ways our most unconscious moment.
Yeah,
right. You're that's the moment you're least hopefully paying attention to yourself. So what are we doing?
Yeah,
I'm not exactly.
It always
sure.
feels different. It depends on the scene and the moment. You know, between DMZ and Dopesick, it was like one. I was like. Felt like I was ugly crying all the time. And, you know, really just trying to connect to sort of, you know, this bravado that Alma was trying to show as she was completely way overwhelmed and over her head, but always with this very singular focus. And so it was just kind of like trying to grapple with that. Like, what does strength look like when you don't want to fight the way other people fight? And kind of checking in with that as she was maneuvering and kind of bluffing her way forward. And then with Dopesick, it was like, it's just an amalgamation of so many different characters. It was kind of like, which one am I leaning into in that moment? And so a lot of it was really talking to Danny a lot and trying to have that backstory. And so it's interesting, like, you know, sometimes it depends on the scene and the moment. And, you know, you work with just these different folks who have very different processes themselves. And like, some people want to run lines, some people don't want to run lines, you know, and like, they want to just kind of discover it in the moment. And like, it's so grappling with that while still trying to keep the integrity of your character is always, I think, a really fun dance and keeps me very present. And I think that's the most critical. If you get too caught up in your head about what you're going to do and what your face is going to look like and your voice is going to sound like, sort of hit this intonation that you think you need to hit to make this scene make sense, like you get too caught up in the artifice. But I think it's really fun when you're just really present and you're just really throwing that ball back and forth, like catching it and going, okay, this is what we're working with, you know, and like finding the textures and giving, I think, the editors and the director the opportunity to play with something themselves and not just making that choice for them all the time.
Yeah, I love that answer. What about you two?
I try to not think anything, like just I like to be on the set before we go into rehearsal and everything, but like just sitting there, but don't try to not talk or try to not think much. Even though someone trying to come and speak something with me, not like co-actors, like a staff, I'm just I'm talking with them, but I'm not talking with them.
Yeah.
So yeah, basically nothing, I think.
Is there music in your?
No music. I just like on the way to the set in the car, I think I listen a lot of music, but like right before action, I just try to not think anything.
Yeah.
Because already I have my lines and I have my kind of like
Character.
Yes.
This was also the first thing you've done as an actress,
Which is incredible. Absolutely
So
transcending
Incredible.
and so deep and so beautiful.
It's just like I don't know how to do it, so I just let it kind of happen.
But you do.
But like, and then at the end, I think I realized that maybe that is my routine, but I don't have any like a purpose to make the routine, but I kind of naturally having my routine.
Yes.
Yeah. So.
Right, it's like beginner's mind. Do you know what I mean? It takes a long time to basically understand that you have to get to this space of like, nothing is not the correct word, but just presence or just openness, or you can call it a bunch of things.
Yeah.
But I think ultimately everyone here works to get to that point, and then you let it play. Look how I just pointed at you. I was like, hey, you gotta answer it.
I feel like for me, we didn't cross-board the show, so I played a character and kind of like the mythological stories all about her over the course of like 55 years. So for me, it was very much like waking up on the day and remembering what physical gait I'm in, what kind of vocal artifice I'm in, what level of kind of control I have in my life and in the scene. And then I work with a lot of like weird breath patterns that will encourage like immediate internal response so that I don't overthink. So I kind of like will reverse engineer like some kind of situation in my body, which causes the intensity of whatever feeling I'm looking for, so that can just set me on the path to start the scene so I'm not overthinking it, but I'm fully embodying it in that moment. And I also I'm an audio person and I'm a smell person, not really a visual person. So I had a different scent and perfume for every era or thing. Wow. And so I would remember, my physical gait based on like how something smelled to me. I was in this for a long time. So it was fun.
And each character you play requires a different moment right before,
Yeah.
And it is interesting what you were saying, like having everything gone so that you can just be present and react and connect. And with me, with the character I play in Yellowjackets, it was all about me killing that because she could never have a genuine reaction unless she was completely alone. So it would literally be like, and this is how she wants to be seen this entire time. So no matter what happens, like, because I would have scenes where I'd forget and be present and react and just be like, yeah, that wasn't right, because she never would let that happen.
Yeah. So I've also heard you say when you would put on the wig and the glasses that people would treat you differently.
Yeah,
on
it was
set.
amazing. It was great for me as an actress because I was like, if this is what this woman's been putting up with her entire life, yes, you'd be like a gnarled piece of like anger. And
So what would people do, and how did it
be like,
you?
oh, mister. And I'd just be like, no, it's still me. I will still kill you. I just happen to have this wig on.
So do you feel like just because of the physical transformation and what we knew Misty to be, that people would treat you like
It's
Misty?
literally just people seeing a woman who looks like that. Honestly.
They feel they can
know
treat her a
nothing about
certain
the character.
way.
Yeah. You see a woman that's that sort of dismissible because she has no social currency. She's not hot.
Yeah.
She's not like powerful.
Yes.
I'm really little. I'm wearing like pastel kitten things and like dorky
Misty
glasses.
from third period Spanish. I love that line.
And so they like literally people's natural reaction to seeing someone like that is to give them a hard time, which is amazing because I have never been on a set where people felt so free to give me a hard time before. And it's really incredible. And the younger actress had the exact same experience.
So interesting. Yeah. I'm curious for both Lily and Emmy, who had such transformations for these characters, if you experienced any of that too.
I don't know. I feel like with this character, there's such a level of, she's like a living and breathing piece of art. She's a performance artist. So I am somebody who does not kind of covet that attention as I walk down the street, but being in a different body, I walked across the Universal lot in everything. And I saw the way business people on the lot looked at me. And it was the first time that I understood the power of like being in an ultra curated, I'm doing this, but like in this body. And I weirdly felt incredibly safe in my body, that it was so much that people didn't almost know where to look. And it really like, I understood the like aggressive power of womanhood. And I was like, I think when I was 13, I saw her billboard and was like, I certainly did not understand my own feminine power at that moment. And I was just like fascinated, like, who is that? What is that? I want some of that.
Yeah, and I also definitely felt that like, because it was so not me, there was so much I put on that I felt so brave in like my sexuality or my, because I wasn't feeling vulnerable because it literally wasn't me.
Yes.
So it was like I had this like strength of this like armor, you know, that allowed me to be like, I didn't even know, maybe more in my body, or at least maybe amongst more people, you know, with eyes on me that aren't like, you know, my partner. Or, you know.
This idea of all the sort of pieces to getting to that place. I mean, I imagine it's many, many, many hours in a hair and makeup chair. But is there a moment in that process where you sort of locked into these characters? Maybe it's the hair, maybe it's the boobs, maybe it's the finished package. Was there a point along the way? And how many hours are you sitting in a chair?
Hours.
Some days were 8 for me.
Oh my God. That's longer than I had. Because it's incredible how we see you so young, and then we see you much older, and she's in her 50s or something, or older.
We don't believe in age.
No, we don't believe in age. We don't believe in age. And it's so remarkable seeing that change in you, not only how they did it physically, but in you and your attitude and your voice. It was so cool.
I think we work with the same dialect coach too, Liz, who we love, and I've worked with since I'm a child. For me, every character starts from the vocal place, and having recordings to actually listen to and analyze. And there's so many of the same kind of mythological stories she's told about herself. So I would not only listen to them, but I would write them down and then write the cadences phonetically and start to study kind of how I could understand the psychology a little bit, especially of someone who wants to be a mystery. For me, it was this very sacred process.
The voice was pretty key. I found like the note on the piano, because it was such a different pitch, so I could almost relate to it from a singing point of view. And I still know what you mean about the psychology of it, because I found that her voice, she spoke really, really fast and then didn't even really pause to breathe before and I felt that way. You feel like you really want to get your point across, but maybe you're not being given time or people aren't listening. So I felt there was ways you could connect to the patterns of the speech and but I always feel the costume fitting's a moment where you go, oh, this is always how I like stand and feel. And then with this, that was like on acid, like tenfold. So it was really the camera test where I was like, finally everything kind of could come together.
I also think there's some liberation in like the moment that they spin you around, like the big reveal, when you don't, I did not recognize myself. I've never, sometimes I have 2 contact lenses in each eye. Like it's not even my earlobes. Like there's nothing of me that I can see. So I just remember at first I was scared because I didn't see myself at all. Like I was like, oh God, where have I gone? Like I'm not there anymore. And then I felt this like, oh, I'm not there anymore. Yes. I can do anything without any judgment. I can go as far as the world will let me go because it's not me anymore.
I love that. How much do you all know about what's to come for your characters? Are you people who are asking a lot of questions, or do you want to sort of let these things ride out and figure it out as you go along? Sort of who are you as actors? Sorry, you seem like you're...
Look at me!
It's a different thing. Like, I did film for so long before I got into doing shows, and it was such a different process to agree to do something before you've read everything. I think that's so weird.
It's really weird.
It's really
It was
weird.
really hard for me on this show. I had a really hard time not knowing and not being able to know. And and I still grapple. I mean, I think up until the very end, I sort of grappled with a little bit of, because with a movie, you know everything. So then you can sit with it and decide exactly, like, okay, so this, I got it. I've got a conclusion. Here's my conclusion. But with TV, things, your character all of a sudden does things that you're like, I really? What? Like, even the second episode, Misty goes on a date, and I was like, I would not have thought that she had any interest in men at this point in her life. Well, okay, and it's just. Yeah, it was very unnerving for me, and it sort of feels like a different skill to sort of live, or to like have an open-ended sort of, I don't know.
Well, you also then can appreciate what your arc is. Like you can kind of make certain decisions. And I there was a film that I was going to do, and then I came to the table read, and they changed my character. And I walked away from the film. I was like, this is not what I signed a contract for. You've broken our contract. Like, this is totally different. And then I remember like being on a show and they made that pivot, and I was like, oh, I can't, I'm already filming this.
Nothing you can do.
And then there's certain things like battles that you have to create where it's like, then there's different directors who come in and like different crews. And so the style and the things that they play with, and then different, writers that come on board, and they decide certain things about the language that your character uses and how they use it. And then you have to fight for your character now. Like, I don't necessarily know where this is going ultimately, but I've lived in this person long enough to know that this dishonors like who she is, and like have that wherewithal to do so. But like, and then wondering like, if I hadn't had so much work behind me, that I wouldn't have, where would I be to fight for this? Like, because there's also like the ability to have that creative license and control, and to be able to put your foot down about certain things that you want to honor about someone or represent about someone, and like that grapple like that, and I've seen that with, maybe younger actors or people who are more novices in the space, and so they feel like something is really wrong, and it because you're embodying it.
But you're also doing, you're doing Star Wars stuff, you're doing Marvel stuff. I mean, when they're sort of that big and that mechanical of an operation, like, can you still do that? Do you still have the power? Do you have to sort of cede that?
I mean, I feel really lucky that I didn't get into a lot of those spaces until after I had been working with a lot of other people. And like, when you're on a set with Spike Lee at 18 and you're fighting for your character and like being taught to do so, because he was teaching me to do that as well, which I thought was really cool. And I look back on, in the 2 films I did with him, how much I learned from him. And so many other people. Like, I was very specific about directors that I wanted to work with, and certain kind of, even recognizing the characters might be girlfriend roles or like character, like story devices, and like always working really, really hard to make that person significant, to make that person be real. I think that's just meant a lot to me, that everyone on screen is real, and they have to be, no matter how fantastical the situation is, you really want to ground them in a way that, because you never know what connects to people, even in like the most insane sci-fi situation, like, you're still talking in Star Wars, you're talking about light and dark and life choices, and that you don't just make it once and then you don't have to make it again. You have to keep grappling with that, and like, that's why those stories continue for generations, because the people who play them, like, I can tell you, Mark Hamill was a true believer from the beginning. Right. Even when everyone else was like, I'm not gonna do anything, he was like right there, like, yes, second movie, Jedi is gonna be a puppet, let's go. You know what I mean? And it's like, those are the people that I look at and go, this is what makes this last beyond us. Like, this is our legacy that we leave behind for people, and storytelling is our greatest gift as a human race.
I think that's right. Christina, I've heard you talk about the younger actors on your show sort of having that confidence, and you being particularly sort of impressed. Perhaps that wasn't how you once felt, and I'm curious sort of about that experience.
Well, I think I was more speaking in general about how wonderful I think it is that now younger actresses are in a place where they can create boundaries for themselves and limits, and I will do this and I won't do that, and they're not difficult. They are just, creating their boundaries. And there's, I've noticed with most of the younger women that I've worked with, there's less of this sense of, I was always afraid of being fired constantly. Just always afraid I was going to get fired. And like still even now, I have to be like, it's okay, you are not going to get fired. You can tell them. So I was just really amazed and impressed by that and how wonderful that is now. To see young women saying, I'm not comfortable doing that intimate scene. I am comfortable with doing this much. Or I don't like the way, really speaking up and saying, that is not how I need to work. Or in just things that at their age I just would not have felt confident enough to do. And I think the industry would have been like, not accepting of it at all.
It's changed. It's definitely changed.
Yeah.
It's great hearing from older actresses and with different experiences talk about what that journey was. It's definitely informed me and certain choices I made on set. But like, it's a different generation. Like growing up and starting acting at 15, I definitely always felt like I was going to be fired, and like, and that this was a grown-up world. When I was a kid, it was a grown-up world. There were Saturday morning cartoons. That was it. Yep. And like it was this with the way that the world exists now. Young people have a creative license and a sense of entitlement that I actually think is quite magnificent because they don't expect to grow up and have a voice. They expect to have a voice right now, and it's been really beautiful to see how that's transformed in these years of being on sets. Like it is I'm like, we have an intimacy director. Like we're gonna talk about this stuff before. Like that was like not even available as an idea. And so I think that those types of improvements are remarkable and really exciting to be a part of.
It's taken a long time, at least for me, and I think for a lot of us. It's especially with television. I feel like the way that you get that voice, at least the way that I've come up, is to eventually get a producer credit. So if you really want to have control over your character and to be in the room while it's either being developed or to have a say, it took me a long time to get that credit. So for both The Chair and the final season of Killing Eve, it was like, it's exactly that. There are new people coming in all the time. You let me help you, or let me actually have a title. It's ridiculous, but sometimes you do need the protection you have to have the boundary and the protection of a title to say, I get to be in this room because someone negotiated for me. But it's also because what I'm interested in is also growing and developing the sisterhood. Because as things are shifting and the opportunities are growing, people need to be developed. Do you know what I mean? It's not just lip service, right? And I'm talking about diversity in all ways, where I'm saying how certain things are kind of working and certain things are not working. And what I feel ultimately is the slow development where you find the person who works, find the person who doesn't work. So maybe that's not going to work. So it doesn't just mean that in this time of openness, because we want to continue it. Right? It's not going to continue
if it's not quality.
Yeah, if it's not quality. If it's not quality. 100%. And so to be able to have, let's say, the power to be able to create the character or to create a constant dialogue with the writers, because you don't always get that. Unless you fight for it in a way, you could fight for it beforehand or you can fight for it during, do you know what I mean? I decided to fight for it beforehand, so I can fight for it during.
During's exhausting.
You know what I mean? So, because it is, I would say, in television. If you're doing a play or if you're doing a film, I think you have that time to speak to a director to be able to develop your character, right? But television, you're really actually in charge. And hopefully you have, and I think this is tougher and tougher now, a consistency with the voice in television. That you have a consistent creative voice that it has continuity. And that doesn't also happen. But I'm interested, Ho-yeon. So director Hwang, right? Did he direct all of them?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Right, that's amazing.
So great.
So great.
Right? Yeah.
My experience was very different, like normal television series, because director Hwang used to be a movie director, and the script was just like fully there, and then we know what to do.
Yeah.
And director Hwang, exactly, he's like a person who has always planned. Like he want the path that we have to go. There is always like a path that he want us to go. So, yeah. So for me, I was lucky, I think, that I don't have that like kind of problem while filming the show, but I thought that I was surprised because I thought Hollywood television like a system could be different from Korea because it's just same. Like that's what I've heard from my friends who did like TV shows in Korea.
I think it's different. I mean, you guys have all your scripts, so I just felt like that immediately that was different.
Oh no, like it's after Netflix came in, there are series that has fully done script.
You created, I mean, you had journals, and you created an internal life for this character. Is that right? What would you write down? What would you sort of create for her that wasn't in the script?
No, it was based on the script, but I just extended the story, and then I just extended the experience by writing down some kind of like a smell or like a physical like things or like emotions if I was there like at that moment, and then I'm just wrote down the diary of the day that happened. So yeah, it's more like extending, not kind of making up the story. But like I added something, but it's just like inside me. Maybe it's right, maybe it's wrong, but for me it's right.
Sure, but I think that's.
I like having those secrets too. Those things that you don't need to tell, your director, your producer. Those are your private secrets of like what you think you had for lunch or what you cried about that morning or those tender things. So your backstory can be private too. That can be your own. And even if somebody thinks, somebody was like, oh, well, she was probably X. Just like, oh. Not for me. Not in my heart. Yeah. And sometimes I also think like I've had both experiences. I've had the experience where like, I would discover things about, you'd open a script and something would be wildly different. And at first you're like, wait, that can't be because that doesn't track with, what I've been doing the whole time. And then it's going to happen anyway. So then it's a challenge to yourself of, okay, well, how can I make this track? How can I surprise? There are things about, ourselves that surprise us or reactions that surprise us, certainly. And so it's finding those moments of kind of the script is confronting you with something. And I mean, unless it feels so totally wrong or you don't feel like you can pull it off, I think sometimes it is an opportunity.
Yeah, I find it too, like, okay, what would she be feeling to make this, to actually behave in this way? I had that a lot on Yellowjackets just because the character sometimes would do things that I just had no, like I was saying, the date that she went on, and I just really was like, at that point, after rejection for 30 years, and nobody, and no men even look at her, like, would she really be this invested in finding love? So I had to really kind of take the whole scene and find a way, find a motivation or a perspective from that felt true to the character. So I decided to make it very predatory. Her whole thing is like, how the way, like men sometimes the whole thing is like, they know you don't want to have sex with them, but if they can trick you into it, then they've won. So for me, I was like, well, that's what Misty's doing. She knows this guy does not want to be with her, but if she can trick him into actually having sex with her, then she's won. And then you take, well, so what would be her manipulation? Well, she's going to play the guilt card and manipulation, and that she genuinely wants this man. And then I was able to do it because it made sense to me.
We need strong a vision for something, for a dramaturgical arc, because what you're saying, actually, I don't mind that because it's so early, that date.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And you're still setting her character
and it's
up,
fine
right?
Too,
that
because
it's like,
if people, because a lot of people have said, I felt so bad for her. And it's like, well, then she was doing a good job manipulating everybody. It's fine if that's how she's taken, because it is very early. So if you do feel bad for her in that moment, there's so much more there's enough room for you to realize that she's full of crap.
I'm curious, you talked about sort of having the confidence to speak up that comes with experience, that comes with, excellence. What are those times? What are the things that you have actually felt like you needed to fight for and successfully did it?
the script. Absolutely. Yeah. Number one is the script, because that's the thing that we work with. It's your character's arc, right? And because in television, you will know this more than a variety of directors who are going to come on, that honestly, you have to catch them up to speed.
Totally.
Do you know what I mean? So if they have the same line that you are reading, then there's less explanation to have to just explain to you where I'm at because we're walking on the same line. But it's what your arc is as your character is the most important thing.
Sure. I don't always just only have opinions about my character, though. I talk about everything because I love it. I love filmmaking. I love storytelling. And like sometimes people miss stuff, you know, like it's really simple things. Like even just I was working on something and it was a robot and I was like, I don't know that a robot would say never. It's very factual, you know, like, and just sometimes you just miss those certain things. And it, you know, it was a process of like, again, I actually go back to Spike on this because I remember on He Got Game and watching, you know, how much like he does a lot of rehearsal, which is something not everybody does. And I'm really glad I started there because it's so hit the ground running on so many other projects. They just do not make that time. And he is really specific about that. And so I learned that that is where you get to play with it. Like he is not super attached to the script at that point. He's like, let's see where it goes. Like, I want to know. But once we start shooting, he's out of there by 7 to go to the game. So like, there is no like I just thought maybe I'd try it. Like, no, you should have said that before. And I would have storyboarded it and made the time for it. But now there's no time for it. So like, no. So I remember, you know, when I got to 25th Hour, and I'm working with Ed Norton, who's like wanting to rewrite stuff and doing all this kind of things. I was like, this is your sweet spot, dude. So you figure out those fights with folks. Like, who is that visionary that you can grapple with and you can collaborate with? Because sometimes people like don't. Like you get that's the frightening thing. Like I've definitely been with people who's like, their like direction is like, can you just move your head like this, like Rosie Perez, or do only black people do that? And I'm like,
Make your eyes look less crazy.
That was my favorite direction.
Oh my God.
Your eyes are already a little crazy, so but just make them look less crazy for this one.
So ridiculous.
I was like, oh, really?
Thanks. I'll take that note
That's
to
a
heart.
tough one. That would be hilarious. What is the toughest direction you've read? Can you make your eyes less crazy? Oh my God, that's terrible. I'm so sorry.
It's terrible. It really is.
But it's to your point that sometimes
Move your neck.
And that's more
Sometimes that's
frightening.
what you're
It's like
getting.
you're a terrible person, but and a communicator. But also more
And you're meant to be a
importantly, like, but also more importantly, like, oh my God, like you're the helm of this project. Like we're in danger. I was like, you know, I see red lights flashing, and I'm looking at everyone who's like putting their heart, blood, sweat, and tears into this, and really like going, okay, how do we work with this person who clearly doesn't care in that same, who has a very different agenda than I can tell everyone else here has. And you know, I feel really lucky that it feels like most of the people, most of the projects that I've worked on, people really just love.
That's great.
We love what we do.
Sure.
I feel
And
that.
we should.
I feel that the opportunity also for women to raise their hand now and say, I'd like to have a production company. I'd like to have a deal at a studio. I think that I've spent way over 10,000 hours reading scripts, and I think I would like to, I mean, which is what I did, which is the inception of this show. I spent like 4.5 years of my life just doing this. So basically a year for every episode. I think, you know, the opportunity to like have a company that's owned and operated by women where you get to read all day long and get to read playwrights and read ideas and talk about like, how can we use this platform to elevate voices that didn't get an opportunity before? How can we work with kind people that like to work really hard and have fun like us? How can we read things and say like, what is the role of femininity in this? What are we saying about women? And then what are we saying about the world, about where we are now? How are we holding a mirror to ourselves? What's the urgency in this story?
Yeah.
And then you get to do it.
Yeah, that's great.
It's kind of what, it doesn't really happen. It's kind of...
And it's happening. Yeah.
I know, and it's happening more and more.
That's your
And
point,
it does take people to just raise their hand and say, I'd like to do this.
But
I'm going to do this.
I found like in a strange way, like at work, and I think it's because of how much you love it, I'm much more articulate and forceful, especially when it comes to my character or the story. I will not let it go. Whereas in life, I wish I was as had such good boundaries and stuff. Because and I agree that if you find someone like on Pam and Tommy, the writer and we were speaking and butting heads, and and the producers too. I mean, and that side got a little hard because sometimes it was taking over the kind of behind the scenes discussions about how much I wanted certain things to be in the right place and the intentions to be right. But as long as someone's listening to you and not just like, I can tell when they're smiling and nodding too, like the actress will be, okay, yeah. But when that does feel like an open communication and you're being heard, it's just like, you know, it's so exciting, and I almost feel better in that in work, which is, I bet, way different than, you know, people would have said 10 years ago, women would have said.
I think that's probably, do you feel like speaking up has ever cost you work? Do you worry about that? Or is the world changed so much that that's no longer a
I had a really hard time with that when I was younger.
You did.
And I saw that people did not want to work with me again because I was very, very upfront and open and opinionated, to the point where it was sort of like, maybe we can say this in another way sometimes. Take a breath and come back, which I learned to do. But I was so opinionated and so sure I was right about my character. Sometimes that I think that it did sort of affect me a little bit negatively, but at the same time, now I am older, I am not quite as aggressive, and there is more of an openness to like, this will be a collaborative process. So, and I think even my aggressiveness probably came from the fact that I knew I was not going to be listened to. You know, I kind of expected to be dismissed beforehand, so that's probably why I never really, probably couldn't take the heat off. But now it feels very, very different.
I think that relates to what you were just also speaking about, working with kind people. I think especially starting in this industry, I was definitely seeing some very bad behavior rewarded across the board regularly, and it feeling like that was never ever going to change. And some of those folks who were gatekeepers of our culture and gatekeepers of like what got greenlit or not, made you naturally cautious. And you know, because I love what I do and I don't want to be stopped from doing that because I pissed the wrong guy off. Seeing that shift in the industry and audiences and just sort of the world that we're existing in right now that is no longer rewarding that in the same way, as well as that growth of the feminine. You know, like being, you know, someone like Danny Strong has worked for years to be able to make a Dopesick the way that he wants to be able to tell it in such a sharp, outrageous way. And it's so brilliant to be able to see him do that. And I feel like a lot of men have had that ability to do that for a really long time. To be on DMZ and see Ava have that exact same position and like how she populates the entire crew and the vision that she has, starting, you know, creating Array Now, going, if you're going to be posting black boxes, here are the folks that you can hire behind the camera. Here's a list. There's no longer an excuse anymore for you saying that you want to do these things, but you don't know how, or it's too difficult. Here you go. We waited a long time to see that, you know, and I feel really lucky. I've worked with some really great directors, most of them though male. And that's not a bad thing necessarily, but like to see these women getting this space and how it changes things. It really just changed the environment. It changes the dialogue. It changes the space.
We've also seen other changes. Sandra, I've heard you say with The Chair, you opened that script and you saw your character's name, and it spoke volumes to you about how much has sort of changed over the course of your career. Can you speak to that? I mean, speak to the significance of it and you know, how much that has been different over the course of your career.
Ultimately, change is slow. Do you know what I mean? I think that's the biggest thing after the past, like whatever, how many years we've been doing this. It's like, it's slow. And when it really happens, it has to happen in such a deep way. So yes, when I first got the pilot of The Chair, I opened it up. The character's name is Jian Kim. And it was the first time I played a character who's Korean, who has a Korean name. So every single person in that cast, it has to call me Jiun. So has to learn it, has to go through it. We'll say it wrong. That's okay. Let's get it right. Let's keep on trying to get it right, right? Because it's like, because I will help you with that. It's also a part of our job. But do you know what I mean? But I'll help you with that because it's about getting to the point of normalizing it. That name, it meant something to me. It's great if it doesn't mean anything to younger people. That if it's normalized, which is the thing that we're talking about, how like younger people will come on the set and I feel like, oh, it's so interesting. Where is your confidence coming from? Also, I will say that side by side is development. That's all I can say. Is it's like when you really want to be able to do change and really want to make quality, and if you have that space to, if you actually have the title, or even if you don't have that title, how are you leading on set? I think that's very important. But so hand in hand with that, the opportunity to be able to set the tone on a show is really super important. And then to have the character and everyone having to call me, Professor Kim. It was great.
No, it's hugely powerful. Lily and Emmy, I want to turn to you with your experiences. I believe you went into Pam and Tommy sort of thinking you would, at the very least, sort of speak to Pamela Anderson. That and that didn't ultimately happen. I'm sort of curious what that process was for you and how it then informs how you become and inhabit this woman and how it changes it and sort of not, I mean, is it perhaps a blessing in disguise to not have her in your head? Or maybe she still is.
That was really, really difficult, honestly, particularly given what the show is about. And I really, truly believed she would be involved. And so once that wasn't going to be the case and she chose not to be, I battled a lot with everything about the show, really, from the challenge as an actor, from what I was trying to say, and my reasons personally for why I wanted to explore the things within it. And it felt deeply personal, but then I think that's why I became fiercely protective, and there were a lot of things I actually changed ultimately about moments of the show because I never wanted it to be, it starts off more salacious, but I never wanted it to be like we were taking advantage or for the sake of something there was a load of sex. And I wasn't a producer, but I was listened to, but it's made me realize I always want to be a producer. And I've done that once, and it was just such a gift to really, really have that voice, because I also love doing the acting, but I loved being involved in the edit and figuring it out. That's a whole nother process that I can't let it go. I can't just stop thinking and go, okay, next job. I'm still itching to know and hear how it's growing and how it's taking shape. I felt like I, in the end, just had to work so hard in myself to know my heart and my intentions and take care of her in it. And I wish it had been different for sure, but I certainly learned a lot.
Yeah. I think it's challenging. I think whether or not you have the express blessing of the person that you're kind of portraying a version of, every single moment you're on screen in this, you are instilling tremendous empathy and kindness and depth, and you are shepherding this woman's story. I didn't know anything about Pamela's story, so to watch your transformation and commitment and the depth that you brought to it is tremendous. There's validity in that.
Sure. And your process was what? You did meet with Angelyne?
Yes.
And how does that then inform you? Is she sort of in your head?
You have tremendous tenderness for every character, and you've researched them and read everything and listened to everything by the time you're sitting across from them. And her first words to me were, "So, why do you have such a hard-on to play me?"
What did you say?
That's exactly why. Because you're a force, and because you're uncompromising, because you're a rebel, you're a renegade, and because you're in the power position in every room you walk into. And I think for me, those questions of who has the right to tell the story, that is, I think, at the crux of Angelyne, the show Angelyne. And in the end, hopefully when we land the plane, it's fully steeped in kind of more mystery and her self-mythology. Because ultimately, Pam and Tommy also not a biopic. There's a talking penis.
Right. It's not a documentary, right?
No, it's not.
It's just our interpretation. It's very stylized. And I think
Emotional impressionism.
gaining empathy through comedy at times too, which is a great tool if you can make people laugh. And I always reminded myself, we're not saying this is the final say.
Right.
It's just purely our creation based on the script that you hope they've done a huge amount of work on, and then all the research that we do.
And I think anytime that you have the opportunity to bring empathy or kindness to something and to show an audience, maybe you thought one way about Pam or Angelyne, but what about this? What about this idea, even if we don't get it right? What about this? I think it's really human, and I think your work is just beautiful.
Like a contribution rather than a final word or say. It's just...
it's a love letter to them. It's a love letter to an icon and to a woman whose story you respect and admire.
And a reframing for the culture, which I think is also important. I want to turn to you, Ho-yeon. This is a project you decided you wanted to act. You put yourself on tape, then you fly to Korea. and you do this thing, which I suspect you have a sense that this is something that is good, but I suspect you didn't necessarily had any inclination this was going to be the sort of biggest show. No. Yeah, that was this lucky guess. You were shot out of a cannon. Take me back to, or take all of us back to what it was like right before this show premieres, and what were the sort of early warning signs that this was going. That's fair. I mean, you've been through it. They're warning signs that your whole life's gonna change.
Yeah.
I don't have any warning sign. I was like, because we watched it, Squid Game, before it came out, like the actors, because we had to do kind of promotion and events stuff. But I thought that, is it allowed to swear? I thought that I fucked. Like, I fucked up. Oh my God. Like, I messed up. Like, I totally messed up. I was like, the first message after I watched Squid Game to director Hwang was, I am so sorry and thank you so much for casting me. I'm gonna cry. But like, it was so stressful. I was like kind of trying to prepare the bad reactions and everything, but like,
but you're so amazing. You're incredible.
But you don't. It's scary when you don't know. When you don't know.
This is why I don't watch myself.
I know. Yeah, it is. It's you don't know.
Yeah, it's very overwhelming to have something. Also, I imagine that's like your experience in the show is like so intense, and it's so. You have so much inside internally, and then you're going to share that with everyone. And
so
I don't know. Sometimes it can feel quite exposing too, because it doesn't. It's like so personal, and then it doesn't belong to you anymore.
But yeah,
she's so beautiful, even when she cries.
I know. Has your feeling about it changed now? About when you watch yourself or the piece, or what's it like?
Do you still think that you fucked up?
Right. Maybe it was better than I thought. Now I kind of have more kind of like 자신감, confidence right now. But like, and then the things go so fast. Like like doing this interview with you guys, it's just like not make sense for me. Like, trying to catch up what you're saying, but just like
it's super intense.
and then. Because like I just started, I never thought about what is going on in this industry. I just wanted to act, but like there are things going on, and then I have like a responsibility to know and then educate myself, and then trying to develop.
It can be really overwhelming, especially if you're doing press simultaneously for like a huge hit show. You're probably gonna need a little time to yourself. And I will tell you, I still watch myself and immediately have that feeling every time, no matter what.
It's I'm like nothing. It just didn't work. It was disaster.
Always. I'm like, I blew it. I blew my big opportunity every time. Every time.
Yeah.
So that might never change, but just like try to remember that you are not always right about your own performances.
Right, and then I think I just have to keep going, even though I make mistake. I cried right now. I don't know why I cried in this table, but like I just have to just keep going on, like fight with my anxiety, and then fight with the situation that I had, and then just keep learning, keep trying.
And what's great too is like I think we're at a time now where everybody really has had a lot of discussions about what it is to be human, and you no longer have to be completely flawless and with no idiosyncrasy. You can't have to hide that. You don't have to hide that you're nervous and all of those things. And that is right. You just keep going. You are you in this moment, going through this journey, and nothing that you do can be wrong.
I have to say that change of people talking about the mental health of this process and like the exposure of it has been also a really welcome change in the industry. Where like we can be emotional, we can show who we are behind our
This is like a mental therapy, like a seasoned actor.
But this didn't used to happen.
These roundtables didn't even used to happen.
Good.
I mean, this is amazing that like just listening what you guys saying is just like so educate me, and then like.
And you
We'll all
can't
exchange
underestimate. We
numbers
had
later.
an audition recently, like a big, long hours. And you're like, spirit, and you made me feel braver. Like I was blown away by you. The fact that like you've done this huge, that's your first job, and then I was auditioning with you, and you were the life force. Like it took me back. Like, and you're so like you have all the natural. Like just the spirit pours out of you, so you just keep going.
The thing I just feel so like the bravery that comes with this job that people don't always necessarily appreciate or understand, and like how we're pushing past our own anxiety oftentimes and our own stressors, and like it's so beautiful that we get to communicate that now and be human beings no matter what job we do, and that be valid and like accepted and explored. Because of all the things that I know we've gone through that we could never cover in a conversation like this, that have made us question our life choices of doing this as a life, style. I just think that that's so powerful that even in that moment, like what made you want to be an actor? Like I'd love to hear like what made you want to be an actor and what changed for you and your appreciation of the story and your performance in it that still brings you to the table.
Like for the first question is that at the moment, like there is no like exact moment that I decide, okay, I'm going to be an actor. It's just like while I'm working as an international model, I traveled just a lot by myself. I was at hotel, plane just by myself alone. So there's not much things that I can do. So what I did was just reading a lot of books and watching a lot of movies and drama, like TV shows. And I kind of and then that time I had a kind of hard time like figuring out what am I doing as a model, like what is my purpose in life and working. And I just keep watching movies and reading like stories, like, and then I realized that maybe I can just study human. Like let's just study human, and then that just leads me then why don't I just do acting like the actress in this screen? So that's just like, okay, then let's just start to learning. And then I went back to Korea like when it's the summer vacation and winter vacation for like each month. I just took a lesson. The things that I doing like for like next to project and the Squid Game, I just auditioned. I didn't get like a script before I got the audition, except the one that we did together. So, but I think I'm still figuring out because I'm reading a lot of scripts, and just starting to educate myself. Maybe do you want to tell people about this woman's life or this woman's life? But still like. And then also, like, the other side, I'm thinking, I just wanted to try, kind of everything. Then I can have more sense of what I like, what I want to do. But now I think I'm just, listening you guys.
We're coming to the end here, so we're going to do sort of more of a lightning round, which sounds way scarier than it actually is. I wish someone in Hollywood would cast me as...
A ventriloquist.
What are you dying to play?
A mute.
I just want to be in Star Trek so I can be in all the universes.
You're really close.
That's my that is the one arbitrary. I mean, I waved at her.
Oh, yes.
I
I've always kind of also wanted to have a superhero costume.
Yeah,
okay.
That would be cool.
Yeah, a vampire, like a super villain.
Yeah, super villain. Definitely
Super villain.
Definitely big villain, like super archetype villain.
Yes.
I
Like
think I'm going to
mustache
slowly
twirling.
start coming into that time in my life. Someone's just got to pick me right, man.
I would really like to play like a rock star or something. You guys obviously Rent and Phantom of the Opera blows my mind, but I would love to do something like singing. I didn't realize that was you in Phantom of the Opera, which I watched like repeatedly my whole always, and I was like, that's Emmy.
That is really fun when you're singing and dancing.
Psychopath killer.
Psychopath killer. I like that. I like that.
Because I really wonder why, and then what's their life? Like, what is the past life about?
And the
Like,
perspective you have to be able to do that is interesting.
Well, on that note, thank you all for being here. It's so good to be back in person and sharing your stories and your time. So thank you.